in tough times and times when change is happening quickly, it's easy for us as leaders to become convergent. You see this in companies all the time. You get into a tough spot financially or there's a lot of competition. They say, well, let's sack all the marketers, get rid of all the creatives, they're dead weight. Let's not have any more options identification phases. Let's just, if we can't invent a solution, let's borrow one from someone else. Let's just sign the deal, make the money, and move on. And there's a place for that at times. But it closes you off to all sorts of other serendipitous opportunities to invent something new. It locks you into the norm rather than the exception. It places you in the center of the radar where everybody is massed rather than on the edge where the true innovators are. And some companies now are having what they call right brain meetings. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we're going to switch on the right brain. Right brain, left brain, ladies and gentlemen, are just metaphors. They're approximations for how this complex organism, the brain, works. Neuroscientists will tell you there is no actual factual basis for right brain, left brain. It's just a sort of American psychobabble approximation to help us understand the difference between analysis and creativity. But some businesses are having right brain meetings because they recognize their lack of divergent thinking. So at 4 o'clock today, we're going to switch on that part of the brain. How many of you know ideas don't occur just when you want them to? And ideas, I like to say, don't hang out in singles bars. As I said, new ideas are born out of associations, connections between existing or old ideas. This is where, in ideas theory, we have a thing that's very important to any leader here today. It's called the adjacent possible. New ideas emerge as we explore connections between what is currently doable. And that's what turns a vague hunch into a concrete, workable innovation. Imagine that table in front of you right now is covered in coloured post-it notes. You know, the little sticky ones. And on every post-it note, there's hundreds of them in front of you right now. So many that they're stacked one on top of the other. And on every one of them is, in black pen, some statistic or quote or maybe a brief story, factoid. You know, if you just sat there and let your eyes wander over those notes for just a few minutes, without knowing it, your brain would begin to form connections between those written ideas. And it may not occur to you at the time, but sometime down the track, you would have a conscious idea based upon those connections. That table in front of you is what I mean by the adjacent possible. Now, if you study the history of invention, you find that there's a multiple often occurs. The same invention at around the same time in a totally different place. And the only explanation for that is the adjacent possible. So we have Marconi in the late 19th century working on the first wireless in London. Meanwhile, in America, unbeknownst to Marconi, A.E. Dolbear is developing exactly the same device in almost exactly the same way. They both referred to the previous work of the electronics genius Nikola Tesla. He was part of their adjacent possible. The same thing, if you care to study it, happened with the development of calculus, the uncovering of the human DNA, the development of the steamboat, the steam engine, Morse code, the telegraph. We could go on, and there's hundreds of examples of the multiple occurring because of a similar adjacent possible. Now, this is not just theoretical. You can make this work for you. First of all, by enlarging your own adjacent possible. In terms of leading innovation, we need to have a broad adjacent possible ourselves. To model curiosity. When was the last time we read a book we wouldn't normally read or picked up a magazine outside of our normal sphere of interest? When was the last time we had coffee or lunch with someone who definitely doesn't agree with us all the time? Some of you, it was yesterday. That's a good thing, because the people who rock your boat are the last ones you should throw overboard. We need those people. They spark in us tension, creative tension, if we allow it to be. Expand your team's adjacent possible. In your training days, do you just have people come in to talk about the process they're already doing, or do you have people come in and talk about something a little different? Slightly different way of doing things than we do them. Not because we're going to change our methodology, but because we want to have a broader adjacent possible. Do we have think tank days? Think tank days, I simply call them that. I can't find a better word for them. They're not think tanks in the technical sense of the word. They're think tanks in the sense that we bring people together, we bring someone in from the outside to talk about an issue or an idea that has absolutely nothing to do with our project. But we're interested in it. And it creates a bigger adjacent possible. We do the same thing with training opportunities. When an opportunity comes for you to go to an event and perhaps engage with interesting people, take someone with you. Some of you might have done that today, and thank you for doing that. Take someone with you because you're enlarging your team's adjacent possible. The resource materials you pick up. One of my favourite things is to give people I work with books that I love. If I read a book and it really does something for me, I'll go on giving that book away for the next 2 years. I did that with A Tipping Point when it first came out. I don't know how many books he sold because people like me were just giving them away. There were other books I could cite today that I've done that with over the last few years. It's a great way to enlarge the adjacent possible for the people you work with and therefore make innovation easier. Encourage idea time in the workspace. This is as true of civics today as it is for business leaders. Google's famous 20% time. Actually, they borrowed that from a few other companies, but Google was the one that branded it. The 20% time rule. For every 4 hours, if you work for Google, for every 4 hours you invest in a Google project, you are expected to invest 1 hour in a pet project of your own. In Google's time. Has anybody here used Gmail or Google Mail? That came out of somebody's 20% idea time. Have you seen AdSense, the little pay-per-click ads? In 2009, that generated 30% of Google's revenue. It came out of someone's 20% idea time. See, there's value to be gained by giving people some space to do something that they're passionate about that lines up with your values. Allow some dream space. Imagine breaks actually boost performance. The University of California in 2013 found that if you are involved in solving a complex problem or doing a complex task, and you walk away from that task to do something that is purely imaginative, reading a novel, listening to music, going for a walk, when you come back to that problem, you will see a 40% boost in your productivity on average. Breaks actually boost performance if they're done the right way. The brain areas associated with complex problem solving are exactly the same brain areas used during daydreaming. Which is why Harvard University found that daydreamers imagine future scenarios and solve problems within those scenarios. That's why so many great inventors and innovators in history have been inveterate daydreamers.